want to introduce John Holladay, aka Doc, and he is with the Recycling Alliance of North Alabama. So I asked him to come here and just give a little speech presentation about recycling and the importance and how we can do our part to help. So, okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll get where I can kind of see the screen too, just so I'll know which slide we're on. Okay, so that's the only clue I'll have about the slide. But first of all, thanks for having us out tonight. So, I get a lot of credit for the recycling program, but Michelle actually runs the recycling program. So I've had the privilege of working with Michelle for 23 plus years now. And she kind of taught me what we needed to do down at the solid waste when I first started. So Michelle's been there longer than I have been. Yeah. So anyhow, but we're glad to have Michelle. So you may not know that we changed the curbside program roughly 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So before that, the curbside program was these open top 18-gallon containers. And anyhow, you had somebody that came by your house once a week in a truck, and they got out, they took your 18-gallon bin and they manually dumped it into the truck. And so the last full year that we offered that program like that, we had a number of employees that had workman's comp issues, primarily related to knees and ankles getting in and out of the truck, particularly when the weather was bad or something is slipping. And so we realized we needed to change the program. Now, in the very early days of the program, some of you may know that when recycling first started in the U.S., they used to do what they call a curb sort. So the truck that came to your house actually had a number of bins within it. So it normally had like 5 compartments. And the driver got out and they took your bottles and put them in one compartment. And then they took your plastics and put in another. And they took your metals. And so they walked all the way around the truck sorting what you had. And so in the early days of our program, so we ran a pilot program in 1989, primarily in the Blossomwood area, just to see if people were interested in recycling. And after running the pilot program, the city embraced it. And so in 1990, we started the curbside program. And then we slowly expanded that curbside program to densely populated areas of the county, right? So if you had good density, it made sense to do that. And then the rest of the county really had access by drop sites. And so around 1995 or 1996, our partner at the time was a company called BFI, and BFI ultimately changed to Allied, and then they changed to Republic. So it's all been the same company. They said, look, if you'll build a materials recovery facility here, or they call it a MRF. So if you hear the word MRF, that's what it is. It's just a place you take all the single stream materials all mixed together and you sort them. So up until around 1996, we allowed not only your paper and your plastics and your metals, but we also took bottles, right? We took glass. And so the whole reason glass got removed was when you go to this single stream, it's conveyor belts and a lot of people on an assembly line kind of pulling your materials out. So as you can imagine, you put glass into a single stream truck, right? Because they quit sorting curbside. Now then they're just dumping it all into a common container. And as it comes out, if there's broken glass and someone's reaching in there, you start cutting fingers and all. But the glass also gets down into the conveyor belts and causes problems. And so we took glass out of the program then. But that's why. Okay, so it wasn't anything other than just trying to make it easier for people to recycle and more efficient, because it's very costly to have a number of drivers that went around and sorted everything. So that was the big change in our program. But when we went to these rollout carts rather than the open top containers, we did some things that were different than anybody else had done before. So we form it in 2019. We oversee and manage the program. We don't actually pick any of it up ourselves. We actually pay a contractor to pick it up. So Platform is who picks the materials up for us. And so we decided that rather I talked about, we covered all of the city of Huntsville and the really densely populated areas of the county. And that included the whole city of Madison, right? Because it's a pretty dense area. We wanted to expand the program to include all single family residents within the Huntsville, Madison County area. That's our service area. And so that included even houses that were in Huntsville and Madison, but are actually in Limestone County, right? Because they're part of the community. And now then Huntsville has a little sliver of property down in Morgan County. And so eventually they may be added to the program.
I just want to point out that you mentioned Recycling Alliance of North Alabama. So that is technically just our division that does the recycling. So Doc and I both work for the Solid Waste Disposal Authority of the city. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. We went to the larger containers. It kept a lot of stuff from blowing out. Windy days, open top containers,
Correct.
and now then you're chasing plastics and paper all through the neighborhood. Again, it made it easier to roll out, and it also allowed for the automation. And part of what we did, this is an 18-gallon container. This is a 95-gallon container. Okay, so we changed frequency of collection, but because we had larger containers. Right, it was every week. Right.
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah, and so that's what we've gone to though now is a once a month service, right? So the things we did that before the industry said couldn't be done is it used to be the practice was anytime somebody built a house, you just ran and gave them a container, right? And it didn't matter if they ever wanted to recycle or not. They just put one on the front porch, and now then you're part of the program. And so we didn't think it made a lot of sense that as spread out as our community is. The city of Huntsville is roughly 225 square miles. The county altogether is probably close to 825 square miles. And we're riding down every street that actually has a single family resident on it to see if they put that 18-gallon container out that particular day. And that just didn't make a lot of sense. But the other is the whole reason that we started recycling in this country was we wanted to conserve those finite natural resources, right? So how much sense does it make to produce a 96 or 95-gallon container and run it out to somebody's house if they never wanted to use it anyway? Okay, and then what you'll invariably find, if they didn't want to use it and they had it around Thanksgiving and Christmas when things got backed up, they would fill it with things, but it wouldn't necessarily be recyclables.
Oh.
And they'll push them out to the
Right.
They'll push them out to the curb, and you'll pick them up. But now then you've got garbage mixed with recyclables, and you've contaminated part of what you've collected. And so the other advantage we had about if you had to register, right? We just said, look, if you care enough about recycling, either go online or call us, and we'll give you the cart. We're not going to charge you for the cart. We're not going to charge you for the service. But care enough to sign up, right? Because those that do really want to recycle. And then they want to know the rules, right? I want to know what can go in there. I want to know what can't go in there. And please tell me what day I get serviced.
Sure.
And so after we made the initial rollout, we told people, look, we understand that one cart won't fit every household, right? One cart a month may be great for a small family, and I say small, 1 to 3 people maybe. But if you have a 5 to 7 person family, it probably doesn't work for you. So we said we would give you the second container. All we needed you to really do is watch a video to make sure you're putting the right stuff in the container. And please break down what you have, right? Because we would get calls from different places where people would say, hey, you picked up yesterday and my container's full. And we would go look, and they would have 4 boxes all intact, stacked up, and the lid won't close. And we would say, oh, well, have you ever thought about maybe breaking the box down, right?
Yeah.
And fitting it in. And the same with laundry detergent jugs, right? They take up a lot of space, but could you at least just step on it and crush it down and screw the top back on, right? And so we started asking people to do those things. We put them on the video, and we asked people to take a quiz.
you do get a pop-up and it shows the status of the routes. So if they're ever behind, because you remember this is a monthly program, so if anything happens in any day's collection prior to you where they get behind, then that puts everybody behind until they get caught up on a weekend or at month's end. So just close out of that status update. But I want to tell you that's there so that once you do have your cart and you're putting your cart out, if it's missed that day, you might want to check the website first. And if you see that there's a 1 or 2 day delay, then just know you should be picked up in the next day or two. But close out of that and it'll ask you, it'll say sign up and do you have a cart or do you not? If you say, yes, I have a cart, that means you're signing up for a second cart. You say no, then that's going to be the sign up for your first cart. I'll let you tell them about the second cart video.
Okay.
And all that.
So anyhow, we started the program. We needed to start delivery in early July to start the program in August the way we did. So we set a deadline for when you could enroll. And then we started the program in August of 2019. We announced what the schedules were, cart deliveries. So people were signing up. We initially, I think we had almost 59,000.
50,007.
Okay.
In our first
We were ordering carts, and as they came in, deliver them. So we had a couple of rollouts for them. But one of the keys is your cart needs to be out at the street by 7 a.m. And one of the things we run into is remember, the number of drivers we have sometimes depends on if everybody's healthy or people are sick, right?
Yeah.
And so if we have somebody call out, we may start splitting routes, dividing them up amongst the drivers. And so be careful about getting used to your driver coming at a certain time. They may come early because you may be part of a split route and they may start on your route. So it's really important to get it there by 7 a.m. The other is, I would tell you, if for whatever reason your cart didn't get collected on the day it was supposed to, I would ask you to leave the cart out to start with. Because remember, they may come out first thing the next morning. So if you pull it back in to call to tell us, they may be in your neighborhood before you're able to notify us. Yeah. And you will have missed your collection. The other is if you have access to the web and you can check the website, that's great. But if you don't get collected on your day, then we need to know really around the next day. You may wait one day, but by day 2, please call us. But because the way the routes initially were done, our drivers are not in the same area the next day. Okay, so now then that we've got a better history, it may make sense to actually either move clockwise or counterclockwise, starting at a particular point so that you don't have to go back. But initially, all these routes were balanced based on what they thought driving time would be and what the initial signups would be. And so we may collect today, and I should have looked at the map before we got here, we may collect up in Hazel Green today, but tomorrow we might be down in Gurley. So if you don't call us, right, we may get so far away from your area that there's nobody there just to swing by and get it. And so that's why we ask for you to notify us pretty quick. Here's one of the keys, though. So the old service area, you don't have the old one, do you? The other was very, very small. So I mean, you're up in Hazel Green here. So I mean, if you can imagine, you had this much narrow area, and now then we cover a lot more area. Now, when we started talking about registering for carts and getting people to sign up, we actually have the ability to scan the cart when we deliver it out, and so we GPS the cart in. And so what that allows us to do is when I talked about, we used to ride up and down all the streets, whether anybody ever recycled or not. We now have the ability just to ride down streets where people have signed up. Now, doesn't mean just because you have a cart that you necessarily pushed your cart out that day. I know some people that want to recycle, but sometimes it takes them 2 or 3 months to fill their container up. And so I can't tell you that just because somebody signed up, their cart will be out. but will only drive down those streets where someone potentially has moved that cart out. And again, that's part of being a greener program, right? We're not burning a lot of diesel fuel going up and down roads that don't have carts.
So it's better to wait until the cart's all the way full to put it out?
Well, it could be, but if I would tell you that if you got stuff in your cart, feel free to pull it out, push it out, because it really doesn't change the driver's thing. Mine was just that some people will say, yeah, I'll recycle. And you say, would you put your container out yesterday because that was your collection? They say, no. Some people say, well, you don't really recycle. No. It just wasn't full. And I wait until my bin gets full to take it out.
The driver to have to stop, because in my neighborhood, it's like 400 stops. So, I hate for them to stop for my little quarter of a cart.
Right. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, and so that's why, what we look at, even we pick up, you'll hear two terms thrown around in the industry. One is what's your set out rate, and the other is what's your participation rate, right? They're two different things, because there are some people that don't have to set out every month, but they are participants.
Sure.
They just didn't set a cart out that
Do
day.
they track that?
We try to track the number of lifts done on the carts.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So there are roughly 91,000 people right now that are signed up for, as far as households signed up to recycle, and about 10,000 of those have a second. Yeah, 12.7 now. Yeah, have a second cart. Okay.
Wow. My
So-
neighbor can use a second cart because they steal ours.
Well, if you let them know, it's easy to sign up and get one. So these are the commodities we take, and you'll have people that move into our area, come from somewhere else, and tell us about other things that were recycled where they used to be and that were not very progressive. And so what I'd like to tell you is there's a reason we take what we take. And that is first of all, the metals. So the steel and aluminum cans, they're outlets for. They're actually businesses that actually want that and use it, right? Aluminum and steel can be used over and over and over again. Paper, whether it's the clean paper or the cardboard. Cardboard is probably the most widely used commodity as far as back in circulation from being cardboard.
Well, thanks to Amazon.
Well, yeah. Paper is good. We only take number 1 and number 2 narrow neck plastic bottles. Okay. So here's the confusing thing. That if you look on the bottom of everything that you have plastic, it's got some number 1 to 7, right? And everybody goes, well, it's got a number 1 on there, and I see that you take number 1s, I'll put it in there. Well, number 1 is just the resin they started with, but they're like over 80,000 different chemical compositions of plastics, right? And so each of those additives has a reason for being in there that changes what they can do. So you can only make new plastic bottles out of old plastic bottles, okay? And it's because one of the additives it's more or less, it's almost like a blown molding, almost like you would make glass, right? You need it to hold a shape, and so you're blowing this glass bottle. Others are made maybe by injection molding or something else. And depending on how it's made, depends on whether it can be converted into something else. And so the narrow neck, narrow at the top, narrower at the top than it is at the base. That's how you decide. And it's just 1 and 2 plastics. They happen to be the most widely used because, again, you can make them into new bottles where you couldn't with the other. And so that's why we don't take them. You'll hear people say, well, I used to recycle all my plastic where I was. And so there are 2 things. One is after China quit taking a lot of stuff, what really happened is China said, look, we were trying to get your number 1 and 2 plastics, and you were just bundling all this other stuff in there. And we're not taking your garbage anymore. You've got garbage, you get rid of your garbage. And we just won't take it anymore. Okay. And so all that plastic that people thought was really being recycled, so after it went through the first place, it would get shipped to a different country. And so when you start hearing about all the plastics that are in the oceans and everything else, In a lot of these countries that have flooding, they have huge piles of plastic where they were paying people $1 a day to sort through and see if they could find any of these 1 and 2 plastics because of the value of them.
No, that's confusing if we can't look at number 1 on the bottle
You can't
know to put it in. So
you-
what's
you-
a good rule?
No, you can look. Remember, I said if it's number 1 or number 2 down here, and you need the neck here narrower than the bottom here.
And that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it. So if it has a number 1 and number 2 on it, but it has a different shape, it's not narrower here than here, just put it in your garbage can.
Can you
Okay.
give an example of what wouldn't have a narrower neck?
Well, how about a margarine container?
Gotcha.
Right, you buy butter.
Okay.
Different shape.
Gotcha.
Okay. Coffee. Yeah. I don't know, Clorox wipes. Yeah. Clamshells like you get salad. You know, it's going to be a different number when you go. Yeah, there'll be a different number.
The
But it's
styrofoam is not.
right. Styrofoam is not recyclable.
Okay. Gotcha.
Okay. But it's just the bottles. Okay. We also take the beverage cartons though. So if you still get either milk in a container rather than a bottle, wash it out. We take that. We take your orange juice like that. We just need you to wash them out. If they're the paper type containers with like the wax covering, we take those.
Yeah, Tetra Pak or something.
Yeah. Things we don't take, and people are well-meaning on this, but at the last minute, we've got a lot of people that do a perfect job getting all the right stuff into a container in their house. And normally it's either a garbage can or something else, and they got this nice plastic bag lining it, and they get ready to recycle, and they grab that plastic bag up, and they walk out, and they throw the plastic bag into the cart. When you do that, you've essentially just gathered up some very expensive garbage and thrown away. Okay? Because here's the thing. Remember, I said these MRFs a lot are assembly lines, right? They're conveyor belts and assembly line. There is no one that's going to allow their employee to rip open a bag they don't know what's in it. Okay? So when those bags come in, they simply toss them aside and throw that stuff away.
Wow.
Okay. So, after you get everything gathered, and I know it's hard to do because the city, particularly the city of Huntsville, says, look, I want all your garbage in a bag. Don't put anything loose in your garbage can.
Oh, in garbage.
Right. And we say, don't put anything bagged in your container.
Oh, that's
Okay. But I just need you, when you go out.
Common sense and do what you ask.
Yeah. When you go out, you got that whole bag. Just shake the bottom of it. You can throw that bag away in your garbage can. Just give us the recyclables.
reuse it.
Yeah. We don't take.
People would think, oh, okay, well then I'll put the bag in there too.
Yeah. No. Throw it away. And the reason that people say, well, I know that I can carry it back to Publix or Walmart or Kroger. Here's why. Think about it. You've already separated it from all other things. And so if you want to know why MRFs don't like this, anyone got an upright vacuum cleaner at home? Tonight, take all the bags you just got from Publix and throw them in your floor and then vacuum them up with your upright vacuum cleaner.
It gets all wrapped up.
That's what happens at the MRF, right?
Okay.
It wraps around everything, okay?
That makes sense.
And that's why they don't take them. It's not because theoretically, if you had this and it was all separated already, I can take it somewhere that just wants this. But if I'm sorting through it, I've got to have bundles, but it causes problems. We don't take glass in our program. There's actually a private company that has a subscription service. Pizza boxes, we mentioned briefly a little bit ago, and that is a lot of times if there's a slowdown in the paper market, in particular the cardboard, then the food residue that's left on a pizza box attracts vermin.
Mm-hmm.
And so these businesses don't want to have a rodent problem and all at their facility. And that's why they don't take it. It's not that the grease off the pizza box can't go into a system. It's really about having it build up. We don't take aerosol cans because, again, if they get punctured or something and they start spewing on the worker, right? No styrofoam. Tanglers are everything from an old garden hose to your coat hangers, right? They just wrap around stuff there. You know, Michelle has pulled out a fence pole before out of a recycling bin. A fence pole. Yeah.
Like the metal.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And like you said, all good intentions,
Plumbing
Yeah,
pipe.
yeah.
but
Yeah, plumb pipes, PVC pipe in particular, which is not part of the program. But the other is, I mean, we've had lawn chairs, and it's like, well, it's got a metal frame. Surely y'all can do something with it. Again, well-intentioned, but just not what we need. Batteries in particular. So in the old program, the only changes we made when we changed from the program with the open top containers to the rollout carts outside of the frequency of service, we used to take household batteries sitting next to your container. We'd pick them up and take them. And we also took your used motor oil that the truck had a vat on it, and they would just open up your container and they would pour it into the vat and they would leave you your container. But when we went where people don't get out of the truck, we did away with that. But what we did instead was, several months before we implemented this new program, we actually opened a household hazardous waste facility at 1055 A Cleaner Way. So Monday through Friday between 7 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the evenings, you can drive through that facility and we have people there to unload. So whether it's your batteries, your automobile products, whether it's old electronics, old paint, pesticides, fluorescent light bulbs, we take all that at no cost to the resident. All you have to do is just drive through the building. We'll have somebody unload your car for you.
is that down on Lehman Ferry?
It's not on Lehman Ferry. It's on a cleaner way. So it's off Trana Boulevard on a
But is
cleaner
it
way.
down in that area
It is in
still?
that general area. Yeah.
Left before the animal control.
And so we do that, every day. And we're glad to offer that service. So this is what I was telling you about, though. When everything happened in 2019 and people told us about all the plastic they had recycled at the old community they were in, or the previous, not even an old community, the previous place, this is where it ended up in Malaysia. None of that was being recycled. It all went to the landfill, and if they had a major storm before they sorted through, look and remember for those plastic bottles I told you, the 1 and 2 plastic bottles, it all just washed in the ocean. And that's where the plastics come from. Okay? So people felt good about it, right? I'm recycling. In fact, there's an article out. I can't remember if the name of the report is The Fraud of Plastic Recycling or the Plastic Recycling Fraud, but it's a pretty easy study that you can find. And so there are lawsuits going out in California over it. But essentially, there was a lot that people were convinced was being recycled that wasn't, and different individuals or industries knew that it wasn't being.
So do you all work hand in hand with garbage collection, so to speak? Because I guess there's a lot that you're going to get that doesn't belong there. And
Well,
a long time ago, people said that our trash was burned.
Yeah.
And that it actually went out to Redstone. And then there was rumor that no, that doesn't happen anymore. So nobody knows.
I can lay that rumor to rest. So here's the deal. So remember, Michelle said that we both work for the same parent company, and that's the Solid Waste Disposal Authority. And RANA is just really our curbside recycling program. So we actually own the waste energy facility. We own the landfills here, okay? And we provide the curbside recycling program. So we are all interconnected. The confusion gets to be this, I think. So our community has grown now to the extent that we really need to start looking at maybe adding a third furnace down there. So we're producing more garbage now than we can burn.
So you do burn.
Right. We still burn. We burn about 175,000 tons of garbage every year, and we make steam with it, and we send that steam to Redstone Arsenal. Now, right now, we produce a little bit more steam than Redstone Arsenal can use, and so we've been working with the Army and the coming months. we'll actually have added a turbine down there so that all the steam that's generated at the solid waste facility, the waste energy facility, will actually initially go into the turbine. There'll be a two-step extraction. So at one point, when you get down to the temperatures and pressures that Redstone needs steam, it'll backfeed this one-way valve and actually send steam to Redstone. And anything they don't need as steam will continue through the turbine and generate electricity, and they'll have electricity. So there won't be any vented steam at that point, okay? The confusion on the recycling is this. A little bit earlier before we started the presentation, I can't remember who I was speaking with, we talked about when we changed the program that Republic Services here closed the recyclery they had. So that created a little bit of a challenge for us because there was no one locally to actually process the single stream recycling we had. So we partnered with a group out of Tennessee called West Rock. They're a paper company. And we actually have to load all the stuff we collect onto transfer trailer trucks and send it up to Chattanooga to be sorted. You need high bay area to load a transfer trailer truck. So we had to segment off. We used to have a tire shredder down at the plant, and we quit taking tires down there a long time ago because they burn hot and they just displace garbage. Okay. And so we put a wall up down there. And now then the trucks that collect your curbside recycling go on the other side of that wall and they dump. And then we load the transfer trailer trucks on the tipping floor when during the day so they can take it to Chattanooga. So people that see the recycling truck going down Crana Boulevard and they go, oh, they're just burning that stuff anyway. No, we're not. We've gone to a lot of trouble to segregate it and get it collected, and then we load it and send it to Chattanooga.
Now, when you say Chattanooga, is that because they have a landfill?
No, they've got a MRF. We've got a landfill. If I was going to landfill it, we'd just take it over to the landfill.
Well, what ends up in the landfill that you're not burning?
Well, there's more garbage. The community produces a lot more garbage
We're
than
trashy people.
Well, we're not. We've just grown.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah. In the early days, so we get the question, and I think it's been several years ago, and I was at a thing that the city was doing, and people had the question about why can you only put branches that are 3 feet in length out at the curb? Because that's really what the ordinance says. Okay. Well, here's why. When we first built the facility, we did not have enough garbage to produce all the energy that we were contracting with Redstone for. So we took tires down there, because again, tires are about 3 times hotter than garbage. So if you had some tires, you can make up a shortfall in garbage. But the other way is we could take branches. But the feed chute, they're 16 feet long, but they're only 3 feet wide. So if you had a longer branch than 3 feet wide, it could bridge on the feed chute. And so the city adopted an ordinance and said, no, you need to cut them up into 3-foot strips. But that was why. Was so that we could feed it down at the plant. So we always knew that the day was coming where we would have more garbage and need to expand the plant. And so
the people that say, I'm not going to recycle because it's just going to end up in a landfill anyway, that could be true, but you still want people to recycle.
No. If they recycle, it won't go to the landfill. Okay?
Garbage.
No. Yeah. I'm telling you, if this community generated 3 times more recyclables and sorted them into their container, we would take every bit of that and it would be recycled. I don't need their recyclables going in their garbage. I need them to recycle what can be recycled. Okay? We don't want it at the waste energy facility, and we don't want it in the landfill. We want it recycled. So there's there's no reason that if you have recyclables, you're not recycling them. Because either we're going to, you think we're going to do something else with it. No, if it's collected in the curbside program, we will send it to a materials recovery facility to be recovered. Now, here's the deal.
Here in Huntsville?
No, it goes to Chattanooga. Remember,
okay.
Chattanooga.
Okay.
All recyclables go to Chattanooga. But here's the deal. So we did an audit not too long ago. So they're actually people they call garbologists. They sort through your garbage, right? So we actually had a company come in and we said, look, we want to know not only what goes in our garbage, but we really want to know what's going in the recycling stream. And so what they did is they took recycled as it came in from different routes. They weighed it, sorted through it, and then categorized it, put it in different bins to find out what we had. Our contamination rates, that's what you're looking at. How much stuff do you have that shouldn't be in there? Was a little bit less than 12.5%, which is a very, very clean product. And almost half the contamination we had was actually just people putting stuff in a bag. We counted that totally as being a contaminant, right?
Sure.
When we went inside the bags normally had the right stuff. Well, it's hard to know whose that was, right? There's some communities that come out and do audits, but people are really not, by and large, that happy about someone coming through and going through their stuff right outside their house. And so we haven't actually done curbside audits like that, but we did go within the trucks to look. And so my idea is look, if you've got a container out front, or if you don't have one you want to recycle, please take out whatever fits our program and recycle it. Okay? If you recycle it and it's the right stuff and you do it the right way, it will not go to the waste energy facility and it will not go to the landfill.
Seems like this is a hard message to get out.
Well, it is. And look, everybody's good intention about it, right? Unfortunately, even talking about that article from Malaysia, once people see that, then they lose some of the incentive, right? It's like, well, people were tricked, and I'm not going to be that. But because look, it takes a commitment to recycle,
True.
right?
Very true.
And it doesn't matter to me what kind of commitment you're talking about, right? First of all, you got to have a second container in your kitchen, right? That's where it starts.
Yeah.
Everyone's kitchen, when we go back to the way things were designed in the 50s and the 60s, the kitchen didn't contemplate having a recycling container and a garbage container, right? So now you got to find a place to put it. In some places, you don't have enough area at your house to store two containers, right? You've got a garbage container, but you really can't get a garbage container and a recycling thing. So it takes a lot for someone to recycle. We understand that. But this community, Huntsville had the first air pollution control ordinance in the state of Alabama, right? Because people cared about air quality here. Okay. And so people here have always cared. I mean, there's a reason that when you look out, Huntsville, although they got river access, Huntsville wasn't what you call a smokestack community, right? We didn't build a lot of smokestack type industries along the river. And that's why, so people here care. And we end up with a great blend of people from all over the country that come from some places that have always been at the leading edge of what's happening environmentally, right? And so that's what our community expects. They expect that we'll have a state-of-the-art program. So the household hazardous waste, again, it's 7 to 5. We don't want people to do, if it's a problem for you to get rid of something, it's probably going to go either in your garbage can and nobody ever knows. It's going into a dumpster somewhere outside of business that nobody's looking, or to go in a ravine or somewhere else, right? So if it's tough to get rid of diesel fuel, I mean, back in the old days, people walked around their fences and you didn't weed eat, right? You just poured diesel fuel all the way around and no weeds grew, okay? But 1 gallon of oil or automobile fluid can actually contaminate up to about 1 million gallons of water, okay? So the community says, look, we want this to be easy. We want it to be convenient. We want to get rid of the stuff that you don't need. We want to recover all the precious metals that end up going into electronics and into the wiring and all. And so that's what the community wants, and that's why it's the program we provide. But again, the combustor ash at the plant, we actually sort through the combustor ash. We run it through a metals recovery facility. We pull out the ferrous and the non-ferrous metals. So we'll pull out
What does
somewhere
that mean,
between.
ferret?
Well, ferrous is magnetic. It apply. Non-ferrous is the non-magnetic metals. But we'll recover somewhere between 7 times to 10 times more metals out of the combustor ash than we collect in the curbside program. Okay. But when people think about recycling, they don't think that, hey, not only are we recovering the energy, and look, a lot of these plastics, when you go back and you really try to read up, a lot of these plastics weren't recycled, but we did recover the embedded energy in them rather than burning, natural gas or something else to produce a steam for the arsenal. We took what would be a waste product and recovered the energy out of it and kept from having as much waste. Okay. We take concrete, so clean concrete.
You take old TVs,
Old TVs, we take them right here, right here. Okay. Computers, TVs, yeah, printers, lithium batteries. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. We take them all, and we take them at no charge to the public. We just provide the service. But like concrete, clean concrete that maybe an old sidewalk that's being dug up around town or something, we don't want that in the landfill. And so to incentivize getting that waste, where if you had normal stuff to throw away in an inert landfill, inert meaning just that it's not petrusable, it's not breaking down, so it could be a couch, a sofa, a bed, or whatever. That stuff comes into us at $26.50 a ton. We'll take a whole load of concrete in a truck if it's clean for $30 a load. And then we will crush the concrete and reuse the aggregate. Right? So we can do road beds out of it. In fact, if you go down to the facility that Michelle was showing you a minute ago, that facility right there, we actually extended the road down at a cleaner way.
I love that name for you.
Yeah.
A cleaner way.
It is, but
Fresh way.
But even up under the slab of that building, a lot of the sub base and the base material and all was actually concrete that we crushed and made an aggregate product rather than going and trying to blast some rock and then crush the rock, right?
Great.
So last year we did about 40,000 tons of it. We grind clean green waste. So last year we ground over 20,000 tons of clean green waste, make a mulch material out of it. And so we'll do everything from having to cover garbage. If you take MSW, that's municipal solid waste. So that's kind of what comes out of your kitchen, right? It's the stuff that breaks down and might have odors and all. We can blend that mulch with dirt. It's got to be covered. Your garbage has to be covered every day. And we cover with it. But we're also able to stop erosion on the slopes and all by taking this mulch material and using it as opposed to trying to find dirt or something else to stop it. And so we try to find ways to keep things out of the landfill. The landfill has a finite life, right? And it's a community asset. And so the more things that we can keep out of the landfill, the better off we are. Yeah.
I was trying to pull up the.
That's why when those
The video.
No, I was trying to pull
Yeah, that's the report I'm telling you about, though, the fraud of plastic recycling. And you ought to just look at it if you get a chance, but it'll change your perspective on what you think about plastic recycling and really just show that there's a reason we've done what we do. And it's not because we don't care. It's because all those things didn't actually get recycled. Okay. And I'd rather stand up and tell you what we're going to do and not do and why than I had try to mislead you that we're doing something that we really didn't do and I knew couldn't be done. Right?
And other states may have outlets for those materials. We just don't have anything in the Southeast.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, probably the largest plastics recycler in the country is located in Alabama. It's down in Troy, Alabama. Okay. And so there are just not a lot of outlets for the clamshells that we talked about a little bit ago, and that's normally what you go and maybe would get salads or something in at Publix and all. The state of California looks like they're going to start requiring a percentage of that content to be recycled by those industries and included in the containers that are distributed later on. But that would be the first for some of those.
Well, we've been guilty of that because it's plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we clean it and we
Yeah.
put it out in the bin.
We call that wish cycling, right?
Yeah.
It's not recycling, it's wish cycling. I wish it could be recycled or let somebody else figure it out.
Is there any way to recycle shredded paper?
Shredded paper can be recycled.
So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
do you give it to you? You can't put it in a plastic
You
bag.
put it in a paper bag, can't you?
Well, I've done that before. I put it in a paper bag and I kind of tape the top so it wouldn't go everywhere.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
when you said you throw
Yeah,
it
just
back
roll
in
it
the
down, but yeah, because when it gets compressed in the truck, it's probably coming out. But yeah,
Well, I wrote on there, shredded.
right.
No need.
You're such a good recycler.
She
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
You are.
Well, that didn't work.
Have you ever reached out to like city to suggest to retailers, restaurants that use, carry out to use plastic like 1 and 2?
Right.
Because I get a lot of containers and I look at the bottom of it, it's 5.
Yeah, but remember, all we can recycle are the bottles that have 1 and 2 on them, right? So other containers, even if we got 1 and 2, don't work. Okay.
There is some nationwide initiative on changing what the producers use.
Yeah.
So they're trying to get, if the producer makes something that's readily recyclable and then there's a person ready to buy it, that improves recycling. But it takes every step.
It takes every step.
It takes it's circular. It's a circular economy. So.
Yes, there's a company over in Athens that actually takes PET, right? In the PET, they take our HDPE. Yeah, no, it's Indorama, isn't it?
Indorama.
But here's the thing that they've got such capacity. If they had, I think they said everything in the state of Alabama, it would run. That they could process it in a day. I
Is
think.
that on Elm
Okay.
Street?
That I don't know.
It's a big facility. It's out in the county, I think.
Yeah.
Indorama.
I live in Athens.
But
They're a worldwide company.
But it's just, it doesn't take them long to be able to process everything. So,
But they're also getting just plastic.
Right.
So like the people we send materials to are separating our materials. They're using paper, they're reselling plastic to somebody like Urana, or selling the metals to a metal.
Yeah.
Say that again.
So I'm not gonna remember what I said.
You talked about we sort.
Yeah, so we're sending a mixed commodity, which what you mix and put in your bin or in your cart, that's all paper, plastic, metals, all mixed in. So we send it to West Rock. West Rock is actually sorting it. They're removing the paper and cardboard, which they want. They're reselling your metals and they're reselling your plastics to companies such as Indorama in Athens, Alabama, that buys only number 1 and number 2 plastics. So that's why it's so important that you don't include clamshells, butter tubs, coffee containers, yogurt cups. I can go on and on and on about what's not recyclable. It's more easy. So like where I'm sitting here in the room, I see a number 1 and number 2 over there. Your lemonade, your Gatorade bottle is a number 1 or number 2. Those 2 plastic containers behind it are not recyclable. So just stick to the narrow neck bottles.
And those.
The containers, the drink containers. So the Gatorade,
Yeah,
yes.
McDonald's house is what we.
Yeah. And I think that's a great thing to do.
Pill bottles that go to Matthew 25.
That's awesome.
Okay. That is awesome.
And they reuse them. A lot of pill bottles.
Hey, and if you have a contact, we have people that call us and ask, what can I do with those? And I'll be happy to send them your way.
Is please, if you have the pull tabs,
Yeah.
we would love to have those. Those are for Ronald McDonald House in Birmingham.
Okay.
And then specifically the pill bottles. In third world countries, they have the Docs Without Borders, and they'll go over and they'll help people. But people have walked all day; they don't have any way to carry them.
To carry them home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll put it in a newspaper, or they'll put it in their shirt.
Yeah.
So
Oh, wow.
So I'll be happy to support that.
Yes,
Yeah,
Matthew 25 Ministries.
Okay.
So also
I've got something in my car.
the pop tops, y'all should have a lot more options to get those. The schools used to collect it, or no, that was plastic bottle caps. Never mind.
Yeah.
Wasn't the
That
pop
was
tops.
hard to
Yeah.
change because we did that for so long.
Yeah,
Doing
they're
it
not
now.
doing that now.
I still say,
The school on County Line Road, collects them. They're the only school that does. Or they
James
did
Clemens.
about 6 months ago.
James Clemens.
high school.
The one, yeah, it's the high school there on County Line.
They may have something within the Rama in
Yeah.
Athens
They may.
because I'm not aware of anybody taking
Because all the other
separate.
ones stopped.
Yeah.
But they're at the
Do you have any more questions?
That's been great. You've answered along the way.
Okay.
That helped a lot.
Well, great. And I
on these
appreciate.
metal cans, like, you know, when you cut the top off and if you clean the can, do you drop that
You
top
can. You can.
in the can?
You
and then
can.
bend it or
You
something?
can. You can just drop it in there if
I
you
was
want to.
worried
I wanna-
about somebody getting
Yeah,
cut
yeah,
with
yeah.
I want to explain.
Yeah,
one more
remember
thing.
they're going to get pulled out really by a magnet, most likely.
Oh, okay.
So I want to explain this real quick. So
Do you do tours?
Yeah, we do at the plant itself. Now, you know, the recycling's hard to do because there's really not a recycler here, but we do of the plant.
the tours, actually, we schedule those with Green Team personnel. They actually come to our facility and actually do the tours. But what I wanted to tell you about is the 2025 calendar. So each year I'm going to do a new one of these, and it will be available on our website. But this calendar does you absolutely no good unless you know your recycling day. So we're going to tell you either first week, second week, third week, or fourth week. So that's the 4 colors. The colors have nothing to do other than to delineate which ones are first week, second, third, and fourth. We actually had somebody call and think his recycling day was the second day of or second week of the month because he had a blue cart. The colors on the calendar have nothing to do with the carts.
Yeah.
We'd have a heavy week. Anyways, once you know your day, then we'll tell you. You'll look at, say, your like what's your day? What's your? Do you know which week?
The third week of the month.
Third Thursday.
Like we
so
just
you live
had it
in
picked up
Madison.
last night.
Do
Like
you-
it was picked up today.
Well,
Okay.
or should have been. Yeah, they're running behind.
I'm confident.
So you would look at every yellow Thursday because your third week. So every yellow Thursday for the year, that would be your day, with the exception of. Let me see if there are any. You have no
So what
exceptions.
does this tell you other than just that?
With the exception of
Right.
5 weeks.
So because a lot of people get confused, we have a lot of. Actually, in March we had 6 weeks. Believe it or not, I've never noticed that until this year. I'm 50 something years
Because at
old.
work, our work calendar is a big year
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of the weather.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that it threw me for a loop when I got an
And it
invoice.
does that about every 8 years.
I've never noticed
Maybe
it.
less.
This is the first time.
Okay.
But anyways, if there's a holiday, which if someone's on first week or fourth week, third week has no holidays in 2025. But if there's a holiday, we always have a 1-day delay.
But the key is people think, you know, we'll get a call. I always get picked up the last Friday of the month. Well, no. We don't do last Friday, right? We do first week, second week, third week, and fourth week. You know, a lot of months you may end up getting picked up on the very last Friday of the month, but it's really because it's the fourth Friday, not because it's the last Friday. And so, you know,
And we always put ours out the night before as
Right.
all my neighbors.
yeah,
So
yeah,
if you forget, just look down the street
yeah.
Yes.
and you'll know.
That's the
Yeah.
best way. So you're
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
fussing out of bed in before you go to work.
Last thing I would mention, I don't have the microphone.
Here,
I'll stand close to the doc. So the last thing I'll mention is that we have over 92,000 customers, and we have 2 super sweet ladies dedicated to answering the phone.
Yeah.
So if you call us, please be kind.
Yeah.
Because we've had,
Yeah.
they deal with a lot. I deal with a lot when
Yeah.
people get behind, and it's a lot of people calling us. So
Yeah.
just please be kind.
Do you have people call and be nasty? Yeah.
Yeah, yes, we do.
Oh, nasty doesn't
Yeah,
describe it, I'm sure.
Oh, we can threaten.
Yeah.
Curse
Oh, yeah.
that.
People
Well,
get
just
angry.
think of all those of us who appreciate what you do that you never hear from.
And that's not true. We do hear from some people that actually, I know you probably only get complaints, and
Yeah.
And I mean, there's probably days that they hear a lot of frustration in their voices. You know, if they just gotten off the call, it's really rough. It can be very. I mean, it's made me cry more than once.
Oh, wow.
It's been tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so what can we do to help the drivers? Holidays are coming. What can we do to show appreciation for our drivers?
Wow. I mean, that's completely up to y'all.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Like
know
at
I've heard of
Christmas
that.
time, I'll leave.
A lot of people do
I
that.
leave like the
What do
chocolate,
that?
the apples that are dipped in chocolate and all that kind of stuff. I'll just leave it sitting on top of the
Do you put a bow on it so they know it's for them?
I was
They're
gonna
not just
say I
gonna
wouldn't
throw
put
it
something
away?
super valuable because they're gonna.
Yeah, they're gonna
They
dump it.
may or may not. I mean, the drivers are picking up 800.
Right.
Well, they should be picking up 800. They're probably doing about 600 now. We have a lot of crew, but 600
Can you
to
stand
1100.
close or take this? either one?
600 to 1100 carts per day that
Yeah.
they're emptying, or they should be emptying.
Yeah.
So
So
what would you suggest? Like put a big bow on it? So they
either
can-
that, or you could mail something to Platform Waste
yeah.
or to our office, and we'll
Yeah.
definitely pass it along
You
to.
just tell them what street you live on?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll definitely pass it along to the drivers. I mean,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't get an email that's a congratulatory email or a thank you email without sending it to Doc. Like
Yeah.
Doc knows, and I send it up the chain of command at Platform as well, because that's important.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a pretty thankless job, and they work really long hours, and
That's something we could do at the holidays, just as a group, is
Sure.
write cards or make cookies or
Mhm.
something.
I'll put it on our neighborhood websites to place remember all the things that we're
I
talking
do the
about.
I do, yeah, I do
You
the
have your
recycling
garbage,
the
size and the recycle.
postal.
And the postal folks do that. Yeah.
yeah, the difference is our guys are not getting out of their truck,
Right.
or they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
They're
So if you
actually
leave
not
something
supposed
on
to.
it, they probably wouldn't even get it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're standing out there.
Or that. Yeah, you
Well,
can
I
hand
have-
it to
I
him.
have been out there because I heard the
Mhm.
truck and I was like,
And then she goes
They come
running.
at all different times. We'd never know.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sometimes
mine
they're
was
right at
too, but
7.
I'm like,
Sometimes
yeah,
it's
they're right later on in the
afternoon.
day.
But the way their route runs, I'm on their
You can do that.
outside. So they come in the neighborhood. make their
So you
round,
know when they're in
and
there.
so-
You hear them in the
But
neighborhood.
they because they come down the street.
So you
But the
know.
truck has went, I'm hearing the truck going up. I jumped up out of bed. It's like, yeah.
I hate to run. I need to go, but thank you so much for having us tonight. We
Yes,
really
thank you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate